He lied and made me the family daycare. Then his mother sued me when I left. Boundary nightmare. I thought I married a partner, someone who would respect my choices, my time, my life. But my husband, Alaric, saw me as a resource. He secretly promised my time away to his entire family, turning our home into a free daycare without ever asking me. When I finally stood up, when I packed a bag and left all those unexpected kids in the living room, that should have been the end. A boundary set, a lesson learned. But for his family, it was a declaration of war. They shamed me publicly, called me selfish, and when nothing else worked, they went for the ultimate betrayal. Stay right there, because what his mother just delivered to my doorstep, it changes everything. My partner, Alaric, basically signed me up to be the designated family babysitter without ever asking me, and he totally underestimated how mad that would make me. I first realized the full extent of his plan at his brother-in-law's anniversary party while I was in the kitchen making drinks. His cousin, Vivian, casually mentioned, "So Alaric confirmed you're free to watch Felix this upcoming Friday while we attend the regional seminar?" And I was completely bewildered, because he had never discussed watching her son with me. When Vivian called Alaric over, he came in with a trivial smile and confirmed, "Yes, I told everyone at the gathering last month that since you manage the household anyway, you could easily assist when the family needs a sitter," claiming it was a huge financial saving for them and for your family. I was aghast. I never agreed to this, never indicated I was available, and wasn't even consulted. But Alaric defended it as simply pitching in, saying I should feel fortunate to be needed because I was so capable with kids. I pulled him aside and firmly told him he could not unilaterally decide how my time was spent. But he immediately accused me of being selfish, stressing that family bonds were paramount and that watching a few kids for a few hours was minor. I countered that it was a significant imposition and that he needed to contact everyone immediately to cancel the standing arrangement, which he only agreed to consider. The first drop-off happened the following Saturday when Alaric's cousin arrived unannounced at 8 a.m. with his 2 children, ages 4 and 7, saying Alaric had instructed him to come early before I'd even brewed coffee. When I tried to refuse, Alaric appeared and demanded to know why I was creating such a drama, and his cousin just left the kids in our foyer and drove off. Over the next 4 weeks, Alaric's family seemed to believe I was their permanent free childcare provider. His distant cousin left her infant twice without a car seat, and his other sister-in-law arrived with 3 kids and announced she'd return in 8 hours, one of whom got ill and another damaged a decorative vase. My own son or daughter stopped getting my undivided attention because I was busy managing 6 other children on a Wednesday afternoon while Alaric was at his office. I finally told Alaric I was finished and insisted he inform his relatives at once that this entire situation was over. But he called me dramatic, claimed people now relied on me, and said dedicated spouses supported their partner's kin. He called me self-centered for not wanting to be part of the family support chain, claiming his mother routinely watched his siblings' children without complaint. "Your mother chose to do that," I clarified. "You made this choice for me without my consent. That is the crucial difference." But he dismissed my objection as invalid and told his family I was merely tired and would come around once I had rested. The next Saturday, 6 children arrived at our door between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m., all with indefinite pickup windows, all expecting me to supervise them while Alaric left for his recreational rugby match. I phoned him while he was on the field and told him to return instantly, but he retorted that it was too late to back out, and since I was a full-time parent at home, this was literally my job. I corrected him. I provided care for 1 child, not 7, and warned him that if he did not come home, I would leave. He chuckled and claimed I lacked the courage to follow through.
I collected my belongings, secured my own child in the car, and drove to my aunt's residence in the next county, leaving all 6 of his relatives' children unattended in our common area. His family began calling within 30 minutes, and Alaric called desperately from the field, asking for my location. I didn't answer until he returned home and discovered the children were still there, awaiting their negligent parents. I told him I was at my aunt's and would remain there until he personally called every single member of his family and informed them the childcare arrangement was permanently terminated. It took a full 5 days before he finally reached out to his relatives, or so he claimed. I returned home on a Tuesday evening, relieved when Alaric agreed to come back, acting as though the conflict was resolved. We ate dinner mostly in strained silence, and he kept asserting that things would be different now that his family understood, and I wanted to believe him. 4 days later, on Saturday morning, my phone vibrated with a message from Jillian, a cousin, reading, "Hey, so when are you getting back to your normal self? I need to drop off the children next Saturday for a few hours." I stared at the display. Back to normal? It implied the past month had simply been a temporary personal crisis, and that Alaric had relayed a completely false narrative. Another text arrived from Alaric's cousin, Mira, asking if I could supervise her baby on Tuesday afternoon since Alaric mentioned you're feeling much better now. Feeling better. I immediately began taking sequential screenshots of Jillian's message about getting back to normal, Mira's query about Tuesday, and scrolled down to find even more messages. Alaric's sister-in-law had messaged 5 days prior asking if the situation was resolved, and his brother had sent a text yesterday saying he appreciated my flexibility and that family unity comes first. Every single communication made it perfectly clear that Alaric had not told them the arrangement was canceled. He had told them I was being dramatic, needed time to cool down, and would eventually agree once I stopped overreacting. I saved every screenshot, my hands trembling, and walked into the living room where Alaric was watching a historical documentary. I held up my phone and showed him Jillian's text, which he met with a small shrug, claiming she likely misinterpreted what I told her. I showed him the second screenshot, and the third, and the fourth, and Alaric's expression darkened as I continued to show him message after message. He finally raised his hand and told me to stop. I asked him precisely what he told his family during his phone calls. Alaric ran a hand across his face and admitted he relayed a gentler version of events, saying he didn't want them forming a poor opinion of him, and that he explained I was experiencing stress and needed a break, but that everything would probably work itself out once I had time to adjust. I felt a core belief shatter. I told him he had lied to me. He promised he would inform them the arrangement was terminated, and instead he told them I was being dramatic and simply get over it. Alaric immediately became defensive, claiming I was making him appear like a neglectful son and an unsupportive brother by refusing to help the family, and that his entire family now suspected he married someone selfish, and he was just trying to manage their expectations while also keeping me content. As if my clearly defined boundary about not being volunteered for work without my explicit consent was just a passing mood he had to carefully manage. I told Alaric this was no longer about the childcare. This was about his blatant deception, about him prioritizing his family's opinion of him over my clearly stated needs, and about him making significant decisions about my life and my time without ever asking me first. Alaric insisted I was exaggerating the situation, saying marriage required compromise and that I was acting like he committed a terrible felony when all he was trying to do was
He made a unilateral decision to volunteer my time without asking me, and then, when I strongly objected, he lied about fixing the issue. "That's not compromise," I said. "That is you acting as you please and expecting me to fall into line." Alaric stood up and said his family thought I was being selfish, and maybe they had a valid point. stressing that true partners supported each other's relatives and I was manufacturing drama where none was necessary. I walked away and retreated to our private study, calling my aunt to explain what had occurred, telling her about the messages and Alaric's admission of dishonesty. My aunt remained silent for a long moment, then offered me a place to stay for as long as I required. She advised me to seriously consider whether Alaric genuinely respected me as an equal in the partnership or if he simply expected me to passively accept whatever he decided, emphasizing that the childcare issue was bad enough, but lying about resolving it was unforgivable. I was still on the phone with her when I heard the front door chime, followed by Alaric greeting the visitor and the chatter of children. I walked out to the living room and found Owen standing in our entryway with his 2 children. Owen smiled and said Alaric told him the misunderstanding was completely cleared up and he truly appreciated my flexibility in watching the children today while he and his partner attended a cultural festival. I looked at Alaric, who quickly looked away. I firmly told Owen I was not watching his children, that Alaric had deceived him, and that there was no misunderstanding. I had never agreed to provide childcare for anyone. Owen's smile vanished, and he looked directly at Alaric. Alaric began to offer an excuse, but Owen cut him off, pulling out his own phone and calling Alaric immediately, despite Alaric standing only a few feet away. Alaric answered, and Owen began to demand an explanation about what was happening and why I was claiming I would not watch the children. Alaric attempted to smooth the issue over, claiming I was still getting used to the family dynamic and sometimes felt overwhelmed, and told Owen, just give it a few more weeks and things will stabilize. I walked over and took Alaric's phone out of his hand, telling Owen directly that Alaric volunteered my time without consulting me, that I never agreed to watch anyone's children, and that Alaric fabricated this entire predicament by making commitments using my time without my consent, and was now lying to everyone about the true situation. Owen gripped his children's hands and left, not saying a word in farewell, simply walking out and driving away. I handed Alaric his phone back. Within an hour, my phone began to buzz incessantly. First, Jillian, calling to say I had embarrassed Alaric in front of Owen. Then Alaric's other sister, calling to say I was making future family gatherings uncomfortable. And then his cousin saying I needed to consider how my actions negatively affected everyone else. Not a single person acknowledged that Alaric had created the mess. Not one person questioned if perhaps Alaric was wrong for offering my time without permission, and not one person seemed to care that he lied to me and to them. They were only concerned that I was not complying with Alaric's wishes. I informed Alaric I was returning to my aunt's house, telling him I would remain there until he had a genuine, truthful conversation with his family about what had actually transpired. Alaric argued I was escaping problems instead of resolving them, saying mature adults did not run away every time a situation became challenging. I packed my bag again and loaded my daughter or son into the car. Alaric stood in the drive watching us leave, making no attempt to stop me. At my aunt's residence, I sat at her rustic wooden table with a notepad and began to document everything, every single incident from the past 4 weeks. The first Saturday when Alaric's cousin left 2 children without any warning, the Tuesday when his distant cousin handed me an infant without a car seat, the Wednesday when his sister-in-law left 3 children for 8 hours, the time one child vomited, the broken vase no one offered to replace, the Friday afternoon when I had 6 children under age 8 in my living room with no definitive idea when anyone would return. The Saturday morning Alaric went to his rugby game while I managed 7 children, including my own. I listed every dismissive comment Alaric made when I voiced an objection. Every time he called me dramatic or selfish or not a team player. Every time he insisted that proper partners supported their husband's family, and every time he claimed his mother performed this service without complaint. The list consumed 4 pages,
And I kept recalling more details. The time I had to cancel a dentist appointment because Alaric's sister-in-law dropped off children early. The afternoon I missed my own child's school presentation because I was watching someone else's kids. And the evening Alaric came home and asked why I looked so exhausted when I'd been home all day. I stared at the pages and realized the situation was far worse than I had allowed myself to admit. My aunt entered the kitchen and poured herself a mug of tea, sitting down across from me. I slid the notebook toward her, and she read through all 4 pages without uttering a word. When she finished, she looked up at me with a very serious gaze and asked if this was the first time Alaric had made major decisions about my life without consulting me. I opened my mouth to say yes, but then I hesitated, considering how Alaric decided we would spend every holiday in his family's mountain cabin without discussing it with me first. How he told his parents we would host the summer cookout before checking if I was agreeable to that workload. How he signed us up to assist his cousin with their apartment move without asking if I was free that entire weekend. How he committed us to watching his parents' elderly parrot for 2 weeks while they toured Asia without verifying if I was comfortable with that responsibility. How he purchased a new motorboat without talking to me about the financial strain, and how he invited his colleagues over for a poker tournament and informed me the day they were due to arrive. The pattern had been evident since we first got married. I simply hadn't connected the individual dots before. I told my aunt it was definitely not the first time, and she nodded, as if she had already anticipated the answer. My phone rang. Alaric's cousin Max. I almost ignored it, but my aunt suggested I should hear what he had to say, so I activated the speakerphone. Max immediately started talking about how he heard I was refusing to participate in the family support system, claiming relatives helped one another and that was the established way of life. He said I was being overly independent and self-absorbed, and that Alaric was trying to build stronger bonds for everyone, and I was actively obstructing it. He said his partner watched his sister's children constantly and never complained, stressing that was the expected behavior within the family unit. He spoke for 4 uninterrupted minutes without allowing me a chance to respond. When he finally paused for breath, I posed one simple question. Did anyone ask me before deciding I would provide free childcare for the entire extended family?
Max replied that this was not the relevant point, claiming that is not how family operates, and that I should simply offer assistance when it's needed. He said Alaric was being considerate by volunteering me because he knew I was great with kids and at home anyway, and that I should be grateful Alaric was finding ways to integrate me into the family life. I told Max that volunteering someone else's labor without their consent was not considerate. I called it controlling. I said Alaric made binding commitments using my time without my permission, and that was unacceptable. Max fell silent for a moment, then claimed I had modern ideas about marriage that did not align with their traditional family values, stressing that traditional families supported each other without keeping a tally, and that I was introducing toxic independence into what should be a communal family structure. He abruptly ended the call. I sat there staring at my phone until my aunt reached across the table and firmly grasped my hand, remarking, Max just confirmed everything you needed to know about how Alaric's family sees you, not as an autonomous person with boundaries, but as a readily available resource they could exploit for their own convenience. 2 hours later, Alaric arrived in my aunt's front door. My aunt allowed him in, but deliberately did not leave us alone. He came into the kitchen looking stressed and annoyed, announcing we needed to talk. He sat down at the table, complaining that his family was now angry with him, saying his mother called him to express her disappointment and his sister was refusing to speak to him. He declared that Max had told everyone I was creating unnecessary difficulties over family values, escalating beyond control. He suggested that if I would just watch the children a couple of times, everyone would calm down and things could return to normal. I looked at him and said, no, repeating,
The answer is absolutely no. I said the core problem was not about watching the children. The real issue was that he genuinely did not perceive any fault in his actions. Alaric became immediately defensive, claiming helping relatives should not be this big of a drama and that I was turning our relationship problem into a family crisis. He said if I genuinely cared about our marriage, I would help smooth things over with his family, accusing me of forcing him to choose between his wife and his family. My aunt intervened from where she was observing, directly asking Alaric if he obtained my permission before informing everyone I would provide the service. Alaric admitted he hadn't asked, saying he knew I would eventually say yes because I was good with kids and home anyway, so it was just logical. He insisted he didn't think he needed to ask because it was obvious I would want to help family. I felt something profound shift inside my chest. He genuinely believed he did not require my permission to commit my time. He honestly saw nothing wrong with making binding decisions using my labor without my agreement. Alaric continued speaking, saying he thought I would be happy to be more involved with his relatives, claiming he was trying to help me feel included because he knew I sometimes felt like an outsider at their family gatherings, so he thought giving me a role would be beneficial. I told Alaric that forcing involvement was not inclusion, that volunteering someone was fundamentally different from inviting them, and that making decisions about my time without consulting me was profoundly disrespectful. I said if he wanted me involved with his family, he should have asked me what kind of involvement I desired, not assigned me an unwanted job. Alaric stood up so quickly his chair loudly scraped across the floor. He accused me of prioritizing my pride over family harmony, claiming I was willing to destroy his relationships with his siblings and parents just to prove a ridiculous point. He insisted he came here to fix things, but I was clearly not interested in compromise. He stormed out of the kitchen and I heard the front door slam forcefully behind him. My aunt sat down in the chair Alaric had just vacated, commenting, "Alaric's definition of harmony seems to be everyone doing exactly what he wants without a word of complaint," and advised me, I think, very carefully about whether this was a partnership I truly wished to remain in. Over the following week, my phone consistently vibrated with messages from Alaric's family. His brother said I was making everything more difficult for everyone by refusing to help. His cousin asked if I was really going to let family relationships dissolve over a minor issue. And another sister-in-law sent a lengthy paragraph about how she always thought I was genuinely a part of the family, but now she had doubts. Each message employed a distinct strategy, but they all shared the same objective: pressuring me to change my mind and resume my role as their free childcare provider. No one asked why I was distressed. No one questioned whether Alaric should have asked me first. Alaric's sister, Jillian, sent the longest message on the Thursday afternoon. The message completely filled the display, and I had to scroll multiple times to read it all. She wrote about how family members made personal sacrifices for each other without tracking who gave what, stressing that their mother had supervised all their grandchildren over the years and never uttered a single complaint, and that was the fundamental essence of family. She wrote that I was being purely selfish by making this issue about my own feelings instead of considering the broader context of family support. She claimed my attitude was harming everyone, not just Alaric, and that I needed to consider whether I truly valued being integrated into their family unit. She stated that if I loved Alaric, I would actively want to help him preserve positive relationships with his siblings and parents, concluding by expressing hope that I would reconsider my position before I damaged relationships beyond repair. I stared at the message for several minutes before typing my reply, composing my response deliberately, reviewing it twice before hitting send. I informed Jillian that her mother chose to watch her grandchildren. No one volunteered her time without consulting her first. No one arrived at her doorstep with children and simply expected her to take them without prior agreement. I explained that Alaric made firm commitments using my time without my awareness or consent. I said that was not a sacrifice, that was being voluntold. I wrote that I would have been willing to discuss assisting with occasional childcare if anyone had actually asked me, but no one did. Alaric decided for me and then told everyone I had agreed when I had never consented to anything. I stated that the issue was not about helping family. It was about respect, consent, and fundamental communication. I told her that volunteering someone else's time without obtaining their permission first was not thoughtful or helpful. It was controlling and deeply disrespectful. Jillian replied within the hour. Her message was shorter this time, but far more aggressive. She claimed I was overthinking the whole minor situation and making it about control issues when it was simply about supporting relatives. She wrote that I was creating drama where there didn't need to be any. She said if I genuinely loved Alaric, I would want to support his family relationships instead of forcing him to choose between his wife and his family. She said I was being completely inflexible and rigid about something that should have been straightforward. She wrote that maybe I needed to consider why I was so obsessed with having everything done my way instead of embracing compromise. She said marriage was about mutual give and take, and all she was currently seeing from me was take. The message felt like a calculated attack masked as concern. I put my phone down and stepped away from it, standing at my aunt's kitchen window. The complete realization settled over me slowly, but with absolute finality. Alaric's family saw nothing wrong with his actions because they directly benefited from free childcare. They were not interested in understanding personal boundaries, consent, or respect. They were only interested in regaining their babysitter. Every message, every guilt trip, every manipulation was solely about maintaining access to free childcare, not about understanding my perspective or caring about my emotional well-being. They had convinced themselves that family obligation meant I owed them my time and effort without question. They believed Alaric had the inherent right to volunteer me for anything without asking because that was their concept of how family operated. The fact that I dared to object to this arrangement made me the clear problem in their eyes, not Alaric, who manufactured the entire situation without my permission. I realized I could explain my position 1,000 different ways, and it would remain meaningless because they did not want to understand. They wanted compliance. Alaric called Saturday morning. He sounded worn out and exasperated. He said his mother wanted to hold a family meeting to clear the air. He said everyone was highly upset and confused, and they needed to talk things through as a family. He said his mother thought if we all sat down together, we could resolve the issue and move on. I told Alaric I would attend the meeting only on one condition. He needed to tell everyone the full truth before the meeting took place. He needed to inform his family that he volunteered my time without asking me, that I never agreed to the childcare arrangement, and that the entire situation was entirely his mistake. Alaric fell silent for a long moment, then agreed he would explain things to his family before the meeting, assuring me he would ensure they understood what happened. I told Alaric that was not sufficient. I said I wanted to personally hear what he told them. He needed to explain the situation with me present or on a conference call I could listen to. I was absolutely not going to allow him to offer another soft version of events where he made himself look virtuous and me look unreasonable. Alaric sighed but conceded, saying he would set up a video call with his parents and siblings so we could all speak together, and he promised he would explain everything honestly. We scheduled the call for the following evening. I spent the remainder of Saturday and all of Sunday feeling intensely anxious about the conversation. We initiated the video call at 7 p.m. on Sunday night. I sat at my aunt's dining room table with my laptop open while Alaric called in from our house, and his parents, brother and sister-in-law, and Jillian and her partner were all on separate screens. Alaric cleared his throat and began speaking, saying he needed to clarify something about the childcare situation. He admitted he may have rushed ahead of himself when he told everyone I would watch their children. He confessed he did not actually check with me first before making those commitments. He said he assumed I would be fine with it since I was at home anyway and capable with kids. He said he realized now that he should have asked me before volunteering my time. His explanation was clumsy and hesitant, as if he was carefully selecting each word. His family's response was varied. Alaric's mother spoke first, looking uncomfortable, claiming she assumed I had agreed since Alaric was so definitive. She said if she had known I had no knowledge of it, she would have asked me directly. Alaric's father remained quiet, his expression unreadable. Then Jillian immediately interrupted. She argued that even if Alaric didn't ask first, I still could have been more flexible once the children started arriving. She insisted that family members supported each other even when it was inconvenient. She said I made a minor situation worse by refusing to cooperate with everyone. Her partner nodded agreement in the background. I unmuted myself and spoke up clearly. I said I needed everyone on this call to fully comprehend what actually transpired over those 4 weeks. I said over 4 weeks, I had up to 7 children dropped off at my house without any warning. I said people showed up as early as 8 a.m. with ambiguous pickup times like later today or this afternoon. I said I never consented to any of it. I said Alaric went to his rugby match while I managed 6 children I never signed up to watch. I said one child became sick in my bathroom and another broke a valuable vase. I said my own child stopped receiving proper attention from me because I was completely overwhelmed managing everyone else's children. I said this was not about being unwilling to help family occasionally. I said this was about Alaric making a commitment using my time and labor without ever securing my permission, then dismissing my strenuous objections when I said no. Alaric's mother shifted uncomfortably in her seat, admitting she had no idea the situation had become so severe with so many children being dropped off without warning. She said if she had known it was 7 children at once with undefined pickup times, she would have intervened with Alaric immediately. Alaric's father had been silent through most of the call, just sitting there with his arm folded, but now he spoke up sternly.
Alaric's father was silent through most of the call, just sitting there with his arms folded, but now he spoke up sternly. Alaric should have asked you before making any commitments to family members about childcare, he said. Volunteering someone else's time without their permission is wrong, even when it's for family. Jillian jumped back in instantly, her voice escalating through the computer speakers. She insisted, family supports each other without keeping score of who does what, she claimed. I was making this whole thing transactional when it should be about selfless, mutual support. She said her mother used to watch all the grandchildren without complaining. I unmuted myself again and stated there was a critical difference between what Jillian was describing and what actually happened to me. I said I was not asked to help, I was explicitly told I was helping. I said Alaric made irreversible commitments using my time without ever obtaining my permission first, and that is not the same as choosing to assist family. I said being voluntold to do something is fundamentally different from volunteering. Jillian rolled her eyes visibly on the screen and said I was splitting hairs and being deliberately difficult. Alaric's mother tried to calm things down by suggesting perhaps everyone needed some time to reflect on family expectations and communication styles, admitting there had been a major misunderstanding about the arrangement and how it came to be. She suggested we all take a step back and establish what reasonable boundaries looked like for family assistance. The call concluded shortly after that. Alaric seemed relieved that the call was over. He shut his laptop and let out a deep exhale. But I knew that fundamentally, nothing had changed. His family still viewed me as being unduly rigid, and Alaric still didn't seem to fully grasp the depth of his transgression.
2 days later, I was at my aunt's scrolling through my personal feed when I noticed a new status update from Alaric's cousin, Max. It was a long commentary about how modern partnerships were abandoning their commitment to extended family ties, stating that traditional customs required supporting your spouse's kin without hesitation and that individuals nowadays were excessively preoccupied with personal liberties instead of family obligations. The post avoided naming me directly, but its subject matter and the timing alone clearly confirmed it was about our recent conflict. Several of Alaric's relatives, including Jillian and his brother's partner, had already signaled their approval. I felt sickened reading it. Our private marital dispute was now a public lecture on my moral character. I took screenshots of the posts and every comment, then telephoned Alaric. He had seen Max's update, but dismissed it, claiming Max was merely venting and I should avoid internalizing it. He advised I should ignore it instead of turning it into a bigger drama than necessary. I felt my resentment surge. I told Alaric that his family was now publicly humiliating me because I refused to provide free childcare, a service I never agreed to in the first place. I stressed that this was deeply humiliating, and he needed to instruct Max to remove the post. Alaric sighed and insisted I was being too sensitive. He claimed social media posts held no genuine meaning and that Max hadn't even used my name, so no one would know it's about me. I argued that everyone in his family knew exactly what it was about given the recent events. Alaric insisted I was overreacting and that I should simply block Max if the post genuinely bothered me. I ended the call, filled with anger and frustration. My aunt came into the room and showed her the post and recounted Alaric's response. She read through the material carefully, then looked at me with profound concern. She stated that this entire scenario was exposing severe, deep-seated problems with boundaries and mutual respect. She said the way Alaric repeatedly dismissed my feelings and the way his family felt entitled to my time were both significant red flags. She strongly recommended I consult a counselor about everything that had occurred, noting that the boundary violations and the emotional invalidation were serious issues that might require professional assistance to process. I agreed immediately. I felt completely overwhelmed and desperately needed an impartial outsider to help me analyze it all. I searched for counselors nearby and scheduled an appointment for the following week. The day of my first session arrived. I met with the counselor, Dr. Elena Reed, and everything spilled out unrestrained. Alaric volunteering my time without consulting me, the 4 weeks of unexpected children being left at the house, my flight to my aunt's house, the tense family video call, Max's damaging social media post, and Alaric's repeated dismissal of my feelings. Dr. Reed listened intently and took meticulous notes. Then she asked me to recall other occasions when Alaric had made decisions about my life without consulting me first. I thought back through the entire span of our marriage and realized there were numerous instances I had simply overlooked before. He had accepted a major promotion in a distant region without discussing it first. He had volunteered us to host their family's annual midwinter celebration without asking if I was comfortable with the work. He had made weekend plans for us without checking my established schedule. He had purchased a luxury SUV without talking to me about it, even though it heavily impacted our joint budget. The list continued. I sat there feeling completely stunned as I recognized the clear pattern that had been present all along. Dr. Reed helped me process this realization, stating that this was not solely about childcare. It was about Alaric fundamentally not viewing me as an equal partner whose consent and time held importance. She explained that what I was detailing was a consistent pattern of disrespect where Alaric made choices unilaterally and expected me to accommodate them. She stated that this type of ingrained pattern would not change unless Alaric recognized the problem within himself and committed to profoundly altering his behavior. I replied that I felt terrified and sorrowful. I said I deeply loved Alaric, but I was beginning to confront the reality that our marriage had fundamental flaws I had been unwilling to acknowledge until now. When I returned to my aunt's house that evening, Alaric called. I told him I had begun seeing a counselor and that I was learning our marriage had serious respect and boundary issues.
Alaric was silent for a moment. Then his tone hardened, and he sounded instantly defensive. He said I was letting a complete stranger turn me against him and his family. He claimed counselors always tried to dismantle marriages by convincing people their partners were malicious. He said I was searching for problems that weren't genuinely there, insisting if I would simply come home and stop being so rigid about the childcare matter, everything would instantly return to normal. I told Alaric that normal was the actual problem. I said normal in our marriage meant him making decisions without my input and expecting me to passively accept whatever he chose, and I did not want that normal anymore. When he finally spoke again, his voice had a sharp edge. He said therapy was making me too focused on myself instead of thinking about us as a unified team. I told him a team makes decisions together, which was precisely what he had failed to do. He accused me of twisting everything around and abruptly hung up. My next counseling session was 3 days later. Dr. Reed listened to the defensive phone call with Alaric and his hostile reaction to me seeking therapy, then suggested couples counseling, provided Alaric was willing to participate. That evening, I called Alaric and introduced the idea, but he instantly refused. He claimed he didn't need therapy and that we could fix this ourselves if I would only stop being so rigid about boundaries. He defined rigid as me imposing harsh, inflexible rules about things that should be adaptable in a marriage, insisting that family helping each other shouldn't necessitate formal agreements and permission slips. I told him I wasn't requesting formal agreements. I was simply asking to be consulted before he made binding commitments using my time. He claimed that was the exact same thing and that I was being difficult on purpose. After we disconnected, I felt a powerful internal shift. I realized Alaric genuinely did not believe he had erred. He truly believed I was the source of the problem for not meekly accepting his decisions, and that my objection to being volunteered as family sitter without my knowledge or consent was me being selfish and inflexible. This realization was painful, yet essential. I needed to understand that he would not suddenly see my point of view because he didn't perceive any problem to begin with. 2 days later, my phone rang with the number I recognized as Owen's, Alaric's cousin. I answered, and he immediately apologized for showing up that Saturday morning with his 2 children. He said he genuinely did not know I had not agreed to watch them, as Alaric had made it sound like a final agreement. Owen said he felt terrible about placing me in that position. I sat down and told Owen I appreciated the call. He said he had been reflecting on the entire situation since the family video call and kept imagining how he would react if his partner volunteered his time without asking him first, admitting he would be furious. He said he completely understood why I was upset and why I left. His apology felt authentic. I thanked him for his understanding and for reaching out. Owen said he was going to speak to Alaric about respecting my time and decisions, as Alaric needed to hear from someone other than me that his actions were unacceptable. This offered me a tiny glimmer of hope that perhaps not everyone in the family was completely hostile. 3 days after Owen's call, Alaric showed up at my aunt's house again. This time he looked distinctly different, more solemn, less hostile. He asked if we could sit and talk. He said Owen had called him and they had spoken for over an hour. He said Owen helped him view the situation differently, and Alaric stated he wanted to understand why this had caused me such distress. I decided to try explaining one last time. I told him it was not about helping family. It was about him making commitments using my time without my consent, then aggressively dismissing my objections when I clearly said no. It was about him treating my time and my autonomy as less important than his personal need to garner approval from his family. Alaric genuinely listened this time. He did not interrupt or dispute my points. When I concluded, he remained silent for a full minute. Then he admitted he hadn't once considered it from my perspective. He said he had been so obsessed with earning approval from his family that he completely disregarded how his decisions impacted me. He explained he had always felt intense pressure to be the exemplary son and brother, and somewhere in the course of our marriage, he let that pressure completely override my needs and my fundamental right to make my own decisions.
I told him I understood the weight of family pressure, but he could not sacrifice my personal autonomy to manage his relationships with his relatives. He needed to be capable of telling his family no sometimes, or at the very least asking me before volunteering me for anything. His family's approval could not be purchased at the expense of my consent and my boundaries. Alaric nodded slowly. He said he was finally beginning to understand that truth. I asked Alaric if he would attend couples counseling with me. He looked down at his hands for a long time before nodding once. He said he would call and schedule an appointment the following day. He also promised he would write a message to his entire family, making it unequivocally clear the childcare arrangement was permanently over and that the initial creation of it was his mistake. I felt a powerful shift within me when he said that. Not total relief, but perhaps the smallest flicker of hope that we might repair this. Alaric called in counseling office the next morning and secured an appointment for the following week. He also drafted a message to send to his family, showing it to me first and asking if it communicated what needed to be conveyed. The message explained that he had volunteered my time without asking me, that this action was wrong, and that there would be no family childcare arrangement moving forward.
I confirmed it was adequate and told him to send it. He pressed send and then placed his phone face down on the table, as if unwilling to witness the responses. The following Tuesday, we sat in the counseling office for our inaugural session with Dr. Reed. She asked us to explain the reasons for our visit, and I began to speak, explaining the entire situation from its origin. When I finished, Dr. Reed directed her attention to Alaric and asked him to articulate what he understood about why his actions were damaging. Alaric took a deep breath and said he violated my boundaries by making decisions about my time without asking. He said he treated my availability as a resource he could promise to other people without my consent, and he understood why I left. Dr. Reed posed several follow-up questions, and Alaric admitted he hadn't truly considered my feelings at the time because he was solely focused on appearing helpful to his family. Over the next several counseling sessions, Dr. Reed worked with us on improving how we communicate and make decisions jointly. She highlighted that Alaric had a clear pattern of making choices and then informing me, rather than discussing things together first, which Alaric admitted was accurate. Dr. Reed helped him see that this managerial approach treated me like someone who needed to be directed, rather than a partner with equal authority. Alaric said he had never considered it that way before, but he could clearly see how his behavior could be perceived as controlling. Dr. Reed assigned us weekly homework about checking in with each other before making any commitments that affected both of us. We attended counseling every week for 2 full months. During that period, Alaric began to understand that his family's expectations did not nullify my fundamental right to make my own choices about my time. He began establishing clear boundaries with his family when they made demands. When his cousin called asking for a favor, Alaric said he needed to check with me first, instead of instantly agreeing. These small behavioral changes felt immensely significant because they demonstrated Alaric was truly attempting to operate differently. 3 weeks after our first session, Alaric sent his pre-approved message to the extended family. He wrote that he had made a grave error by volunteering my time without consulting me first, explaining that this was wrong and that there would be no family childcare arrangement moving forward. He emphasized that this was his error, and he took full responsibility for creating an unfair situation. Some family members responded with supportive messages. Owen texted back saying he appreciated Alaric being honest about what happened. A few people did not respond at all. Jillian responded 2 days later with a cold, snarky text. She wrote that she would remember this when Alaric needed assistance from family in the future, making it clear she thought we were both being selfish and that family was obligated to support each other without keeping a tally. Alaric read her text and then responded. He told Jillian that was her choice to make, but he was not going to pressure me into providing free childcare just to maintain his standing with the family. He said he valued his marriage more than he valued looking good to his relatives. Jillian did not reply after that. Alaric seemed visibly troubled by her reaction,
but he did not retract what he said. After 2 months of counseling and residing at my aunt's house, I decided to move back home. Alaric had demonstrated genuine changes in how he communicated and made decisions. Before I moved back, we sat down and formally established new ground rules. Any decision that affected both of us required the explicit agreement of both people. Family visits needed to be discussed and planned together. Neither of us would make commitments involving the other person without consulting them first. Alaric agreed to every rule. 2 weeks after I moved back, Alaric's parents invited us over for a meal. Alaric checked with me first before agreeing, which felt like tangible progress. During the dinner, his mother apologized for not speaking up sooner, explaining that she had assumed I had agreed to watch everyone's children because Alaric was so certain about the arrangement. She said she should have asked me directly instead of just accepting Alaric's word. Her apology felt sincere. After we finished eating, Alaric's father asked Alaric to help him in the external workshop. On the drive home, Alaric recounted what his father had said. His father told him that a significant part of being a good partner is protecting your wife's boundaries, even from close family. He stressed that family is important, but your spouse must come first, and Alaric needed to commit that to memory. Alaric said hearing that from his father felt immensely significant because his father had always rigidly emphasized family loyalty above everything else. 3 months after the initial crisis, Alaric and I were in a much better place, but still consistently working on things in counseling every other week. Alaric was diligently learning to check with me before making any commitments that involved my time or affected our joint schedule. I was learning to speak up immediately when something bothered me, instead of allowing issues to fester. Dr. Reed noted we were making excellent progress on communication and mutual decision-making. Alaric's relationship with some family members had permanently changed. Some people accepted the new boundaries and now asked me directly if I was available to watch children occasionally, which I sometimes agreed to when it fit my schedule. Other family members remained distant and seemed to maintain a persistent grudge about the whole affair. Alaric was learning that real family respects your personal choices, even when those choices do not directly benefit them.
The official-looking envelope sitting on the counter was a summons for a local court hearing, and the plaintiff was Alaric's mother. The letter claimed that since Alaric had designated me as the family childcare provider in front of multiple witnesses, I was now liable for damages incurred by the broken vase and the cost of finding substitute care during my absence. I felt a cold shock travel through me. This wasn't just a family disagreement anymore. They were using the legal system to try and force me to comply and challenge my boundaries. I immediately called Alaric, who was still at work, and read the summons to him over the phone. He was absolutely furious and rushed home immediately. He couldn't believe his own mother would take this step against his wife, especially after he had explicitly taken responsibility for the whole mess. He insisted she was being manipulated by Jillian, but regardless, the papers were real. We called Dr. Reed, our counselor, who advised us to immediately hire a family law attorney, emphasizing that this was an attempt at legal coercion, and we couldn't ignore it. Alaric secured an emergency consultation with an attorney the next morning, and together we explained the entire story. Alaric volunteering my time without consent, the 4 weeks of unannounced drop-offs, the damaged face, and Alaric's own written admission that he was solely at fault for the arrangement. The attorney listened intently, then calmly informed us that the case was baseless. They explained that Alaric's mother had no legal contract or enforceable agreement with me. Alaric's mother's claim relied entirely on Alaric's unilateral, unapproved designation, and Alaric's own written communication, which he had sent to the family, explicitly taking responsibility, was our strongest defense. The attorney agreed to file a strong motion to dismiss the case immediately, and Alaric's father, who was clearly horrified by his wife's actions, privately reached out to Alaric. He said he had no knowledge of the court summons and offered to cover all of our legal fees, stating that his wife and Jillian had gone too far. Alaric and I refused his offer for financial help, but appreciated the gesture. The motion to dismiss was successful a few weeks later. The judge ruled that there was no contractual obligation for me to provide unpaid childcare, and Alaric's mother was ordered to cover a portion of our legal costs, which served as a huge vindication. Alaric's mother, deeply embarrassed by the legal loss and the public display of dysfunction, ceased all communication with both of us for months. But the experience solidified the changes in our marriage. Alaric realized that my boundaries weren't about being rigid. They were about defending my autonomy, even from the people he loved most. The lawsuit was the final, devastating event that proved to him and to the remaining hostile family members that our marriage now operated on mutual consent and that our partnership came first.
I truly believe that even though this whole nightmare of setting boundaries nearly cost me my marriage, it ultimately saved me, forcing Alaric and I to finally build a relationship based on mutual respect. But now, with a legal letter in my hand and his mother actively trying to punish me for saying no, I have to ask, do you think I did the right thing by moving back in? Or should I have walked away completely? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Hit the like button if you support my decision to fight for my boundaries, and don't forget to subscribe so you can see every update in this shocking legal battle.